The abomination is the eternal enemy of the Mundus. To do nothing in the face of its threat is to be complacent in its crimes. The only thing that separates the world from darkness are those who choose to stand between them. Welcome to Scrollplay, the talk show all about role-playing in the Elder Scrolls Online. The Human Floyd here to bring you news from all over the roleplay community. Later in this episode, I'll be interviewing Mycroft and Galleon, two of TESO RP's longest-standing lore aficionados. From the NA Megaserver Aldmeri Dominion, it seems Joan and Jode have smiled on the Sugarclaw clan, who have been seen buying up land in Mistral. They've moved into the old Malmore Embassy, which they've converted into the Mistral Trading Company house. Many people from all across the land have come to see if they can get in on their apparently lucrative business. And so it came to pass that the bards and minstrels of Western Tamriel got wind of what happened in Leiloria that day. How they did, no one knows. Perhaps someone made mention of it some night while in their cups. Or perhaps the inspiration was of a more mystical nature. Whatever the truth or consequences, the tale of Runadil, the Dunmer who turned into a rose, became a song. And that song joined the bardic repertoire of tragic love until the end of the Second Era, its knowledge ranging as far as the noble courts of High Rock, ever hungry for such fare. The Dunmer's names and descriptions vary, but Runadil, who forsook her own kind for love, is always Runadil in the tales. In DC news from the Lion's Fang, the barony of Silverthrone has been very active of late. Apparently, a Dwemer ruin was discovered just in the forests west of town. So far, the Baron has been keeping it sealed up tight, and the entrance guarded to dissuade robbers and would-be looters. Local citizens are also excited to hear that the arena is finally finished. So you can probably expect some gladiatorial fights from them soon. Last Sundas was the wedding of Lord Varric Vekon, younger brother to Count Virgil Vekon, and that of Lady Kristen Gawadunin of House Gawadu. It was held at the Grand Cathedral in Shornhelm, and the vows were administered once more by Elwood Thrawn, priest of Mara. The happy young couple was then celebrated aboard ship in Stros Mackay. Speaking of that wretched hive of scum and villainy, rumors around Stros Mackay talk about a ship that has made the port its home. A strange ship with a stranger crew, captained by a Redguard with a thirst for discovery. They call her the Nautilidae. Nautilidae, I hope I'm saying that right. A ship who sails for adventure and exploration, wherever the winds might take them. Crewed by Min and Mer from all walks of life. The 6th Legion, using insider knowledge given to them by a Khajiit pirate, has successfully captured an enemy vessel on patrol in the Abecean Sea. The crew of the Eagle's Glory fell prey to the trickery of the 6th Legion, who disguised themselves as a Dominion merchant ship in need of aid. After transferring a good deal of valuable cargo from the captured ship to the Legion vessel, the Bendu Olo, the Eagle's Glory was scuttled. The Legion then dropped off their Khajiit ally at Stros Mackay with his share of the cargo, and returned to Wayrest to donate their portion to the Covenant war effort and take a much-deserved rest. A brazen criminal organization has emerged in the town of Evermore. Their creed, devils and pox to the constable. Their ringleader is the ambitious Leo the Foiste, a gambler who brooks no rivalries. Leo is assembling a slide boots crew of thieves, cutthroats, illicit merchants, and whipjacked pirates, known as the Aces and Eights Gang. The Evermore Constabulary has stated, "There is no more suspicious society at large than the Aces and Eights Gang, a rabble that conspires against the public of Evermore with wicked deliberation and contrivance." In EP news, Tales from the Second Era Skyrim has begun. I got the Ragnar haircut to celebrate. This is a large-scale storyline that explores what might happen post-quest completion in the Rift and Eastmarch. With Thalic the Wormfather dead, the remnants of the Worm Cult have struck out at the Children of Skyrim, sending what Reachman armies they have left to siege Shor's Stone and Gearman's Hall. Rumors of some horrible act of necromancy taking place at the Withered Tree Tavern in Riften have also begun to spread, and people in Nemalton are talking of strangers with odd accents spending time in the tavern. All these things are just the beginning for the cult's plans in Skyrim. We are in desperate need of more villains for the plotline, though. The way that I have it set up, there's no predetermined outcome. The bad guys could win, but right now it's not looking like they will because they're so vastly outnumbered. If you're interested in playing a long-term villain for the plotline, or just a one-off red shirt who dies, please contact me on Engine or email me at thehumanfloyd@gmail.com. You can find out more info and help spread the word with the link tinyurl.com/ESO Skyrim. The position for the EU AD news correspondent is open again, so if you're interested in promoting your faction's roleplay and getting the word out there, please contact me. In DC news, another trial was held today in Wayrest. Uxthal the Bloody, a member of the Windhelm Fighters Guild, stood trial in Wayrest for charges of murder, aggression, and escape from custody. He was sentenced to receive a minimum of 10 whip lashings in the market square, and any further lashings until he would no longer stand on his own feet. The sentence was carried out immediately after the trial among vocal protests from Uxthal's supporters, who called it a terrible injustice and were outraged that a man who risked his life to protect the good people of Stormhaven against the evils of Daedra, vampires, and werewolves might be so punished, while those who had been accused of lycanthropy and aiding vampires would still walk free. There are rumors of another upcoming trial for a former Imperial soldier, Caucastane Arcadius. Caucastane? Well, he might soon face trial for treason, war crimes, and Daedra worship. Could there be an execution this time? In other news, sailors and dock workers are talking about the crew of a ship called the Ruby Queen, which has set sail from Wayrest and seems to have reached the shores of Sentinel. The ship, apparently renamed from the Buell Queen, is not in very good shape. One local sailor called it a floating lumberyard, saying that he thought it was slated to be decommissioned. Why this ship has been taken towards Hammerfell seems to be unknown to most. However, one old sea dog was heard saying that the Ruby Queen went out to salvage from wrecked ships. In the week starting Sunday the 14th of June, many of the EU DC players will be moving to Bergama Hammerfell for a week-long epic event called the Withering of Bergama. More details will come as the date approaches here on Scrollplay, but you can read up on the thread in the description below. Let us know in the comments if you have any additional information about any of the stories we talked about today. We're going to be talking about how to use lore in the planning of your storylines, and in the extended interview there somewhere, we talk about using Argonian's adaptability in roleplay and their relationship to Sithis. We also talk about some of the new Altmer lore that came up in the OPcast interview with Lawrence Schick, and we talk about how Templar magic does not come from the Divines or the Three or any other godlike being. Click the link to give it a listen. Welcome back to the show, Galleon and Mycroft.
Hi, Floyd.
Why, thank you.
And last time we had you guys on, we talked a lot about lore. We talked especially about why lore is important in roleplay and how it can be utilized. We'll dig in a little more into that, and then we will be looking at some of the new lore that came from the OPcast interview with Lawrence Schick, the lore master of ZeniMax Online Studios. So let's start off by having you introduce yourself, Galleon. Tell us who you are, IC, and your involvement in the role-playing community, OOC.
Okay, well, I'm Galleon. I roleplay Galleon. I've been on TESO RP since something like February 2013, so over 2 years now. And I roleplay generally two ultimate. One's an old healer from a first hold, and much less frequently I also roleplay a young brittle battle reeve named Romulcano, which I kind of see as two, different reactions to being a superior race. One being responsibility, the other entitlement. And OCD, I guess, compared to you fine gentlemen, I don't really do very much. I've never been a guild leader. I've never really ran a significant event series. I just kind of hang around the lore forums, occasionally write stories, and try to make myself useful.
And you do a fine job of it. Definitely, I would say the lore questions thread is one of the most useful threads on TESO RP, and both of you guys are both very active on that thread, which is nice to see. So, Mycroft, tell us about yourself and your involvement with TESO RP over the years.
Well, I've been on TESO RP since fall 2012. Can't remember the exact month, and I suppose that doesn't really matter. Became an admin on Adra sometime in early 2013, I think. Mostly because of my contributions to the then rather empty lore forum, which eventually ended up with me being the most senior admin on the site at present. But I still mostly deal with the lore forums and general policing of the site, so to speak, whereas I leave the technical stuff to those who are more able.
So you round up the ruffians.
That is what I do, and I tell them off. I give them a very strict talking to. That's what I do. Being somewhat serious, though, we rarely have any bad eggs. I mean, we have the occasional verbal altercation, I suppose, but usually that solves itself, or people just let it go. I mean, most of the people who visit the site are adults, after all, or at least they act maturely enough to be considered adults while they visit the site.
I remember the first talking to you gave me, actually.
Right, I gave you a... Oh, right, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I remember.
You got a talking
It's forgiven
to?
but not forgotten, yeah.
What?
All right, it's outside the scope. Outside the scope.
Oh, come on. All right.
Well, plenty of people get talking to if they do not
Behave.
yes, or if they partake in
Shady activities.
yeah, let's call it that.
The underbelly of TESO RP. No, we do have a really great community, and I think it's reflected in the forums for the most part. So in the previous interview, we talked pretty extensively about why lore is so important for roleplay. But could you guys give sort of a brief overview of that, just for new people coming in?
Well, I suppose that part of why it's so important is because, as I always like to say, and I constantly write in the various lore threads whenever I try to defend my view on things, is that it provides a framework for which to create the canvas of whatever your roleplay might be. It allows you to, well, in some cases it might not actually live up to what you want, but if nothing else, it still gives you sense of where the corners are and when you're starting to paint outside the picture. You get your full ensemble of colors and stencils, I suppose, as well. But you still have pretty much free reign as long as it's within those 4 lines that the frame provides.
Well, to the extent that I agree with you, Mycroft, I think at the simplest, most practical level, it's a matter of continuity with the world around you. I mean, it's basically fun to feel like you're part of, the NPC stories, and your stories don't diverge so much from basically what's going on, the context. And practically being on the same page with somebody you're role-playing with, knowing the terms they use, knowing the possibilities and limits of the actions you're trying to take, it just keeps things immersive, and I guess it avoids having to screech to a halt every so often for explanations and conflicts and misunderstandings or worse. And that said, I do think that we should be generous with people who color outside the frames, as you put it, or outside the lines. And I think I might have mentioned this on the previous episode of Scrollplay we were on. I dislike low zealotry for its own sake. I consider the poor use of lore in RP to get really militant about small details, where you can kind of just easily gloss over them and move on. So I guess my answer in one sentence would be that it's just not quite as important as some people make it out to be.
And I think that's why I like having you guys on, because you have that slight contrasting opinion. Although I think you both definitely agree that lore is there for the roleplay. So one thing that I would like to discuss this time is starting up storylines using lore, because starting a roleplay plot and seeing it through can be really challenging, and some people even see lore as an obstacle to their ideas that they want to play out through their roleplay. How can you use lore to help tell a story rather than limiting a story? Can you give any practical examples of how you can take lore and turn it into a storyline, or use it to accentuate a storyline?
Well, I think first of all, familiarity with the lore and I guess commitment to the setting can actually alter the ideas and themes you're going for, right? In a good way. It's a huge source of inspiration. I mean, we have 20 years of Elder Scrolls lore now, so there is so much in there that you can find stories that you did not know you really wanted if you do take the time and actually learn the lore. But where I've seen people run into trouble, I think, is when they want something very, very specific that maybe they're fond of from other settings and such. Like if people used to be, they had a really beloved blood elf or a druid, or you have some vampires who really miss the intricacy of the vampire, the masquerade setting, for example. Or maybe they miss like the interplay between light and darkness from the Old Republic RP. Like if you're missing something, if you want something really, really specific, then you kind of run into trouble where the lore kind of runs out on you. We actually had somebody on the forums at one point who wanted to do something out of the Game of Thrones, which was like transform into a wolf and scout around and kind of do what I think Bran did or whatever it was. And we arrived actually at the conclusion that it is basically feasible with this setting, but it took a bit of digging. So yeah, if it's something really specific, you may run into trouble. On the other hand, like let's say, for example, the thing we did yesterday, Floyd and myself and a bunch of people from the Bane Scales and from Relics and so on, which was by Valen's own admission kind of influenced by Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and Coppola's Apocalypse Now. So he took that basic idea of delving into this Heart of Darkness unfamiliar to the expedition and what happens if we make the figure that's the nod to Colonel Kurtz an Argonian shaman, right? and yeah, it's basically take the idea you're going for and dress it up in the trappings of the setting, and
Absolutely.
then see whether the result leads back to maybe changing the original concept in a way that might actually surprise you and yourself and improve your story. So
Definitely, and I think a lot of times when you you go in with a base idea and allow yourself to be open enough to influence from the previously established lore, you find yourself with this, in Varlin's example, this perfect Heart of Darkness in Elder Scrolls story. And you get all the great things from Heart of Darkness, and then you also get the Hist and the Altmer and all of the other things that come from Tamriel.
Right, that you don't really find in the original works. So you end up with something arguably novel because you have taken the time to actually, put Elder Scrolls lore upon that framework, and it does not rob you of the original idea. So I think almost anything you can think of, unless you're in for something very specific, can be done within the lore we have.
Then there are the stuff where you might not actually, you might have something within the setting that you find to be absolutely fantastic and you want to include it, but the setting does not necessarily allow for it to be as readily available as you might want.
Such as being a Dragonborn or something like that.
Or wanting to be a Dwemer.
Yeah.
Because that's, I have to admit, that's perhaps the one I've met the most. People don't really know what the Dwemer are, except they were short mare who liked to live in mountains, apparently, create great big cities on the ground, and worked with metal and worshipped the brass god. Well, not technically, but yeah.
And poisoned the farmer.
Oh yes, that too. Yeah, they did.
Never forget.
Never forget. They did a great many things, and then they suddenly disappeared. At the end of the Merafic era, with no one knowing what. So plenty of people have plenty of explanations, and surely there's one or two left. I mean, after all, Yakram Bagan, he suddenly returned from Oblivion, so why cannot another one? And technically, sure, someone else could return, but then there's the whole question of how much that would actually impact the timeline. But what you can do is you can include these things that you really like about the lore, but you might have to tone your expectations down a bit. You can include someone who wants to who either believes himself to be a Dwemer or a descendant of the Dwemer or whatever, or you can include I don't know, some kind of archaeological dig, the Dreamer ruin, and then somehow you manage to discover a control relay for a Centaurian or something along those lines.
If I remember correctly, we had sorry to interrupt you, but I think we had a player who, a while back, who was just so into the Dwemer, and their character was a Dwemer researcher who was just so completely enamored of everything to do with the race that they kind of ended up believing themselves to be one in a slightly unhealthy way.
That's right.
And they were not really a Dwemer, but they still managed to take that lore that they really loved and, kind of really be neck deep in it, without quite breaching it. And I think with almost everything that can be done.
Exactly, that's the alternative you can then reach. It's not quite the way Galleon said, where you twist an already existing concept that doesn't exist in the lore to fit the world, but rather twisting a concept that's that's already in the world, but isn't really something you can grasp or make use of due to how it is represented. But you can then again twist it and mold it to be somewhat fitting, if nothing else, or at least be representative of the original idea you had, which again could make for a fantastic storyline, provided that it's of course done in a way that will get people to find it interesting. It's really a matter of how it's handled, and again, another example would be the Akaviri, something that a lot of people also have a great deal of interest in. And we know that they exist. I mean, the Kamal were responsible for the creation or the inception of the Ebonheart Pact. We have the Saeshi, or however you wish to pronounce that, who were rulers of Tamriel for at least 200 years, actually a bit more.
And fairly recently.
Yes, fairly recently by the time of TSO. That's about... Oh, I think that's about 150 years ago by the time of TSO that the last Akaviri potentate died, or was assassinated rather. But so again, we have proof that they exist, but we just don't know exactly what they are because there are so many conflicting pieces of information about the Saeshi, and the rest just aren't that well described. The Kamal are snow demons apparently, and the Tangmo are monkey people, and the Karpo-Tun are tigers. So again, take what that is and then just mold it into something. You find some strange markings on a rock on a cliff wall. Somewhere in Cyrodiil that shows the snake men, and then you suddenly have proof that the vampire snakes of Akavir have been there, and you decide you want to travel to Akavir, you want to find out how it goes, but somehow, because we can't actually travel to Akavir, then your expedition gets botched in some way or another, perhaps sabotaged by remnant Saeshi still on Tamriel. You can still get an adventure out of that failed expedition without actually reaching the goal.
Definitely.
It's all a question of how you decide to twist the original intent.
Well, on the flip side, for all that to work, though, as role players, we have to be generous to people who do that. We can't, just box their ears for trying to come up with something like that and perhaps stumbling a little bit and perhaps, it creaking at the seams because they may not have thought it out quite down to the pedantic levels we might have employed, right? And, ultimately, if somebody, for example, says that they want to be a quarter Akaviri human because they like the East Asian features, for example, of that confers, just gloss over it and move on. Don't hold everything to beat them over the head that it's not possible or unlikely or they don't have enough information to do it responsibly. Just, roll with it is my opinion.
And there's always your own headcanon too. If somebody tells you I'm a quarter Akavir, that doesn't have to be true for your roleplay. They for your headcanon, maybe they never said that. If you don't like it, you don't have to accept it.
Exactly, and also outlandish things like, yes, I fought a dragon once, which is about as arguably bad as you can get, right? You don't have to believe that character. That character can be boasting about it. You can ask them the pointed questions, well, where are the bones? Why did the authorities not investigate what you've done, etc., and, have them squirm a little bit, but ultimately just let it go. They're a big boaster.
Oh yes, certainly. I would also like it on record that I absolutely loathe the term headcanon, but that's, I suppose, besides the point. But yes, of course, you need to give people leeway because not everyone is as well versed in the law, first of all, which means that if you don't know as much as, say, well, you can't really expect people to know as much as myself and Galleon unless they've spent hours and days and, well, God knows how much time poring over the various in-game books and NPC conversations. You can't expect them to know as much as you yourself do if you just happen to know quite a lot. So you need to give others leeway, and similarly, some people haven't necessarily been into MMORP for all that long, which means that they might behave slightly differently than what you'd expect as well in regards to character creation, how they set up their stories and their events, and so on.
Well, even if it doesn't flow entirely from ignorance, I think, we should have a reservoir of generosity for people who just love something so much they want to do it. And, unless it's completely world breaking, we should try our best to accommodate them and let that happen, because that's how we end up with the really good adaptations of the lore, through some occasional errors and maybe less worthy efforts.
I would just like to say Dragon Break. There we go.
Yeah, if things break the world, we can always just drag and break it away. That's the beauty of the Elder Scrolls. Like if things go completely to pot, then yeah, drag and break never happened.
Which is a completely viable thing to happen in lore if stuff's going crazy anyway. So,
Well, it was invented to create, or rather, just so that the developers could say, "Hey, you know how Daggerfall, it had multiple endings, right? Well, we don't really want to bother with making any one of them the canon ending, so they're all canon." Dragon
That's
Break.
very true. It actually puts an interesting spin on your retcon day, Floyd.
right?
It could have happened.
Yep.
And we would not have known.
Dragon
That's the
Break.
beauty of it. We would not have known how it happened, so we don't have to justify who actually had the power to do it.
And I actually had the privilege of talking to Lawrence Schick a little bit before his interview with the OP cast, and he essentially said that about all roleplay. He said, with the way that the Elder Scrolls universe is, all roleplay is canon in a way, even if it contradicts itself.
Because Dragon Break. There
Because
we go.
Dragon Break. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. That was a great interview. Love hearing your insights as always.
Well, it was fun.
It was.
Just like last time.
And maybe in season 3 we'll have another Mycroft and Galleon episode.
This time with a third party, unknown to all. He'll be the Sithis to our Anu and Padme.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Oh, right.
Well,
Sithis
actually,
is also Padme.
entirely seriously, that is a good point. I mean, as honored as I am that you're having me on, and I mean, Mycroft is kind of special because he's the original lore lizard, but there have been lots of people interested in lore coming up on TESO RP who are at least as well read at it as I am, and a lot of them would probably love to be on the show at some stage.
I will keep my eyes open.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In the next episode, we're going to have an interview with Varland about creating and executing storylines. And after that, Scrollplay is going to take a little bit of a hiatus. We'll probably start up back in August, somewhere around the end of summer. So you can kind of think of this next episode as a mid-season finale. How much do you adhere to lore in your roleplay? Do you think that following lore enhances it, or do you like to work outside of the framework? Let's have a discussion about it in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people have to say. Thanks for watching. Keep roleplaying. Peace. Welcome to Scrollplay. Uh-oh. Oh, Chester, no. No, Chester. You can't be in Scrollplay. You can't.